I noticed you staring at me. Your teacher looked up from his papers. Did I do something wrong? You asked. Upsetting Bakugou was the last thing on your agenda. Ever since you first laid eyes upon him, he was haunting your dreams. I think you're seeing things, said your teacher. The life of a pro hero was something Bakugou Katsuki had dreamed of all his life. Being allowed to use his quirk, with admittedly some restrictions, to hunt down bad people. It was perfect, until the Paranormal Liberation Front went a step too far. It led to the global defense effort getting involved, and many new restrictions and mandates made the job a hassle. Despite that, Bakugou was always ready to jump into the fray. Until one fateful day, he had been hit with a stray bullet that had been coated in a highly potent quirk suppressant. Just like Mirio Togata all those years ago. In a way, it was poetic justice for the bullying he brought upon the, at the time quirkless Izuku Deku Midoriya. So at the tender age of 27 he had already retired. What a joke. Bakugou had went through too much pain to just go work in a stupid office job for the rest of his life. After the excitement that was high school, and a few years he did get to serve as a pro. This would have led him into a deep pit of depression. The life-changing moment was then on his 28th birthday, when a certain white rodent came to offer him a teaching job at UA. At the time, Bakugou had furrowed his brows in confusion. Many hero schools were forced to shut down after the GDE began to actively interfere with the Japanese government. But it seemed UA had been spared, and was still pumping out capable heroes. Under the watchful gaze of the GDE, of course. Bakugou could remember it was as if it was yesterday. By now, he was 29. And he had to admit, this teaching gig, while not as exciting as his time as a hero, was unbelievably gratifying. Until one roadblock had been placed in his way. The third year. You. Something about you aroused him, filled him with dark desires that luckily he could manage. All he needed was to look at you to feel accomplished. But it seemed that even that had been too much. You leaned against his desk with pleading eyes. Is it the test we did yesterday? Did I fail? As if he would let you fail. Bakugou had never been biased as a teacher, until you came into his life. No, everything is fine, he spoke. You had waited until the classroom had been empty to approach him on this. And now you felt humiliated. You blushed heavily. I'm sorry. You blinked, trying to process the most neutral answer. No need to apologize. He looked away for a moment before adding, And why do you think I would? If you failed, I would just hand you the test and be done with it. Your blush intensified, not thinking you'd get a question like that. You took a step back. You looked down at your feet. Bakugou rubbed his hands, trying to suppress his emotions. He felt sorry for you. He wanted to hold you and apologize for his rudeness. But he couldn't. You were a student. I don't want to disappoint you, you said eventually. Disappoint me? Bakugou furrowed his brows. Yeah. You began to nervously play with your hair. In an attempt to keep his strict persona, he retorted with, How enough do you think it's important to not disappoint me? Your muscles tensed under his gaze. You should do this for yourself, not for me. Who cares if I were not to approve? As long as it ends with you becoming a better hero, I have no right to complain. As if heroes need to be good nowadays anyways, he added quietly. You took a step forward, putting your hands on his desk, taking a great care in squeezing your chest just right. Sir, do you have a crush on me? Yes or no? You needed to know. Bakugou's eyes were vibrating, as they attempted not to glance down at your exposed flesh. Crush is a word children use to explain physical attraction, said Bakugou coldly. Yet you defiantly stared right into his crimson eyes. They're infatuated with the meaning of love, but are unaware of what it entails. There's a reason once a so-called crush pays them attention, they lose all interest. You puffed up your cheeks. I'm 18. Don't treat me like a child, you shouted. Albeit morally dubious, that would make it legal. Finally, Bakugou smirked. I wasn't calling you a child, even though your parents might still think that. I was making fun of crushes and how stupid they are. You narrowed your eyes, as if you were capable of piercing his gaze. He smirked before saying, Say what you want to say, in a hushed tone that was almost seductive. You blushed and almost looked away, but you remained defiant and battle-ready. There's no one around to judge you, except for me. You knew that when he judged, it was harsh and often unfair. So this reassurance felt more like a threat. However, there was something else that you picked up on, something you clung to. Sensei, I think you're attracted to me. I think you want to grab me and force yourself onto me. You want to ravage my body like a beast. Your deflections, your looks, and the fact that I get preferential treatment on tests shows it. Bakugou suppressed an angry remark. While most of your statements were true, he didn't need to give you preferential treatment. And even though now the police force was reinforced by the GDE and heroes were no more celebrities than crime fighters, there was still a chance of death, so he was glad you were good enough. Deflection is a good word. After all, what you want is morally wrong. You chuckled. That was the confirmation you wanted. Who cares about morals? It's legal. In an attempt to battle his frustrations, he leaned back in his chair and began to rub his right thumb over the back of his left hand. Bakugou wondered if Aizawa ever had a problem like this. The air was thick with the scent of yours and his suppressed emotions. Your body was hot and in a heavy state of arousal. So was he. Both of you remained quiet, waiting for the other's first sign of weakness. A cold war of emotions and hormones. The first one to give in to their carnal desires, for the other would be the deciding moment. Eventually, it was Bakugou who made the first step. He reached under his desk and slammed a bundle of keys on the table. The key with the smiley face will lock the door to the classroom. Your eyes darted towards it, with her back to his face. The man folded his hands under his chin and thought. Once you lock the door... He inhaled, through a slightly opened mouth to mentally prepare himself for his next words. You're in for a hard hour of detention. Your legs quivered, and you could feel something wet run down your inner thigh. With a shaking hand, you grabbed his keys and walked up to the door to your classroom. You inserted the metal object, but turned around before twisting the keys. Just so we're clear, you are not doing the obvious joke where you actually do put me through detention, right? Bakugou blinked perplexed. Like, we are going to, you know. He sighed and combed through his blonde hair. He actually was planning on doing that. And by the first answer he got wrong, he'd punish you. Honestly, he felt a little deflated. Katsuki put a hand under his mouth to hide his amused smile. If you don't lock that door right now and take off your goddamn uniform, I'll kick you out myself. Your lips curled up into a smile. As he turned the key, you heard a loud crash from his desk as he just wiped away today's papers. I'll clean this up later, don't worry, he commented as you approached him. You slowly stepped closer as you unbuttoned your UA uniform. And he began fiddling with his belt. His black jeans already strained by a suspicious tint. His childlike excitement, however, made him fiddle with it a little too much, and while you were already discarding the grey uniform to reveal your underwear, he had just managed to pull down his pants. So you sat down on his lap, wrapping your arms around his neck and shoulder. Faces so close your noses were almost touching. This feels wrong, hushed Bakugou, his hot breath tickling across your face. It smelled like the caramel candies he kept popping in during class whenever it got dead quiet. You wondered what yours smelled like. Yet so right. You finished his sentence. Suddenly he buried his head into your neck, kissing it softly. You groaned, feeling his teeth scrape against your skin. Bakugou's hands moved down from your hips to your butt. Your head fell back, and you gave a loud, pleasured moan as he tightly squeezed your cheeks. Then he finally pulled back, and your eyes met, before he slightly turned his head and hungrily pressed his calloused lips onto your perfectly soft ones. His tongue quickly invaded your mouth, dominating yours in a waltz of wet noises, huffs, and groans. He could tell you weren't that experienced yet. While still holding on to you, he got on his feet. You squeaked as you felt your weight shift entirely onto his greedy hands. He turned around and slammed you on his desk. Forcefully he parted your legs. You shared one last look of sheer lust before both of you reached the point of no return.